Hello and welcome to the Art of Selling Online Courses. The goal of this podcast is to share winning strategies and secret hacks from top performers in the online course industry. And today's guest is Andy Fossett. And he's a lifelong martial artist and a former school teacher, and he's deeply concerned with autonomy and fitness education. He's CEO of GMB Fitness, and he's dedicated to providing an open and accessible culture for clients and for staff to enjoying more of what they're truly capable of. And we're going to get into what that means throughout the interview. And what they're doing is they're selling courses about physical movement, and they're absolutely crushing it. One of the things that they do exceptionally well is their tone and their style, and we're going to get into that as well. Now, before we start learning from Andy, I want to mention our sponsor. The Art of Selling Online Courses is brought to you thanks to my company, Data Driven Marketing, and we help online course creators increase their online course revenue 20 to 100% through strategic funnel optimization. So if you need help with increasing opt-ins, email marketing, webinars, any kind of funnels, then get in touch. Go to datadrivenmarketing.co/calculator to find out how much more you could be making from your courses with the ideal funnel. So Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm going to have to check out that calculator because I guarantee there's about 10 things I'm missing.
Yeah, it took us a lot of building that. It's about like version 6 we're on now of like, how do you actually make this accurate and helpful and quick to get the information? So yeah, people should definitely check that out.
I think that's super important that it's version 6 iteration. I know we'll talk about a lot of things over the next few minutes, but my whole approach to everything, I think that sums it up, is iterating, trying a thing, getting better and better and better. And so we'll get into details soon, but I've been doing this for almost 11, 12 years now, and everything is just a step better than it was before. And I think if you keep doing that, you can't help but succeed.
So talk to me about that then. Let's get into that for a sec. What way do you do that? Like what techniques or what way of thinking, or do you do like reviews and planning where you're trying to iterate like that? How do you go about trying to do that iteration?
Right. I mean, there's probably a lot of philosophies on this, and there's people that are very, very analytical and very driven that probably have templates and processes and, Notion templates for all of this. I don't get that process driven by a lot of things, but one of the things that I think has brought me here is just the idea that there's always a better way. And I think that part of it is just a little bit of who I am, is that I look at something and I always think of how it could be better, how it could be more efficient, or how it could be easier, how it could be a little more pleasurable. I'm always just trying to think about what could make something nicer. And even though I'm selling a product that is, for all intents and purposes, complete in some ways, I always look at ways that I can make sure that it's, doing a better job. Or I don't know, I'm a tinkerer. That's just kind of a bit who I am. So I have a hard time letting go of something and calling it done, but I am really good at getting something out the door and letting myself continue to improve it and iterate on it over time.
And how do you find that works with the rest of your team? Do you tend to attract other people like that? Does it tend to mostly come from you?
Oh man, they hate me. They hate me. Not fully. I think the biggest thing is when I'm hiring, is one of the things I try to do is I try to solve for empathy. So everyone on our team is pretty invested in our mission and is a really good listener. So when we have our clients going through our courses, we get a lot of quantitative data, but we also ask their opinions. We ask them how things are going. We try to make sure, check in with them, see if they're making progress. And we listen to their questions, we listen to their frustrations. And when we do this, we're not trying to answer the question. We're trying to sort of answer the question behind the question. This is what happens a lot of times. Somebody says, well, how do I do this exercise? And well, they're looking at a video of how to do the exercise. They want us to explain the exercise by email now? No, what they're saying is that they're having trouble with figuring out how to do it the way the person in the video is demonstrating it, or something like that. There's something that is causing them to not be able to get the information out of what we're saying. So it's our job to dig into that. Our team is pretty well trained and pretty interested in learning from all of our client contacts. And this is something when we get into marketing later too, it'll be important again. Everybody at our team is just really, really interested in the people that we're helping. So when we do have these conversations or interactions with them, we're trying to find ways that we can make things better, make it work better. So it's something that I think it might just be a personal makeup thing, but I think there's also a degree of training and a degree of just interest in the client that goes into looking at these interactions as a source of qualitative data, a way to learn, and a way to gather information about how to improve what we're doing.
That is fascinating. I think a lot of people, when they start out in online courses, seem to focus on, I'm going to teach how to do the thing. And then there's about 8 things that get in the way of doing the thing. Like you're saying, you know, I can't do it like the guy in the video is doing it, for example. And I feel like that's the area that's available for differentiation a lot of times with online courses, in terms of what is it that you're going to do that's going to make it easier for the customer? How are you going to make it possible for them to actually be able to achieve the outcome that they're after, besides just showing them the exercise or giving the list of things that they're doing? And it sounds like you've made that an integral part of the way that you are interacting with customers. Is that then a part of the marketing as well? If you're answering people's questions, that's kind of a customer service thing, but you seem to mix up customer service and marketing quite a lot at GMB. Is that fair?
Yeah, one of the earliest things I learned once we got too big that I couldn't answer all the emails myself is I realized that as the founder of the company, I have 2 partners, by the way. As one of the founders of the company, when people ask questions, I was doing more than just answering the question, because I want to sell them on the product if it's right for them. And I realized as soon as I started teaching someone else to do customer service that they didn't have the same drive to do that because it wasn't their baby, right? And it became an important thing early on for us to understand that client support isn't just about answering the question, but that it is an important sales channel. And I think in B2B situations, people realize this, quite readily, but in B2C, we seem to think that the purpose of customer support is to say things like, thank you, sir, for your message. It's very valuable to us to hear your opinions. We care deeply about the customer experience, blah, 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 blah. The answer is no. That doesn't help anybody. When somebody takes the time to message me, I'm trying to think of, can I help them? What's the most efficient way to do that? Does it result in a sale? Or can I send them to a partner or even a competitor or someone that's going to do a better job for them?
And how have you been able to instill that then within the customer service team? Because you said they weren't doing that at first.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's natural for people to think that way. I don't think most people, if they're hired as customer service, think of themselves as salespeople. But what we have done is, I think, half of our support team right now is actually certified trainers in our system too. And that's something that's very helpful for us. So they can answer questions basically, as far as, coaching people through the programs. They can give people very, very detailed answers on, which program is the right fit for them and their goals and things like that. If they've had an injury and they're wondering if they can do this after a knee replacement, we can answer that because we have people that are very invested and very knowledgeable. And so I think what it is we have people that their role is customer service, but they don't see themselves as customer service representatives. They see themselves as coaches, as advisors. And that's the main thing is I pay better than average for that role, especially. And I train people and I hire people specifically who are predisposed to actually care about the results.
So you're kind of hiring particularly for the attitude in terms of people who are after supporting people. And then you're training them about how do you support people in a way that then also can lead to the sale as well.
Yeah, I mean, we can't help everyone with our product. And, if anybody goes to, the GMB website and they look at what we do there, they'll see that it solves some certain problems. It doesn't solve other problems. We're not helping you get jacked. We're not a weight loss thing. You're not going to get basketball sized biceps doing our stuff. So there's a lot of problems in fitness that we don't solve. We don't tell you how to shop for Lycra or where to get the best spray tan. That's not really our thing. But the things that we do, we're pretty good at. So we can be really confident when somebody comes to us and tell if we can help them or not. And if we can, then yeah, we definitely, the best way we can help them is to sell them a program, because that is our most concisely encapsulated process for doing this. It is the most efficient way that we can help people. But if our programs don't do that, then we can help a lot of people by pointing them to somebody else that does something similar in a better way that's a good fit for them, you know? And we know our industry well enough that we can do that really, really confidently. So I think that part of it is just our people know our stuff well enough that we can be very confident when it is a fit. And that also lets you be confident enough to say no, or to say maybe try something else instead.
So that seems really interesting. You're looking at figuring out, if I'm going to try and state this back and see if I got it, you're trying to figure out if what you are offering is a good fit for this person's goals and for their situation. And if it is, then you feel very confident in promoting your program to them, because you're like, well, we built this specifically, we took a long time over building this in order to help people like you solve this exact problem. So therefore, that's what you should do. That's what you should go and buy, which I think I see a lot of online course creators struggle with that. They kind of feel a little bit more self-conscious about promotion. Not everybody, but I definitely see that amongst a number of people. So you've got that overall attitude, and you've got that throughout the customer service. Do you use that as part of your email marketing and automated marketing, kind of that idea of trying to figure out who's in what segment and who should have what product?
Oh yeah, and we're not as programmatic about that as we've tried to be at some points. But I mean, in general, a lot of my approach to marketing is probably related to a lot of direct response. Anybody that's done a lot of copywriting or studied copywriting understands some of the main principles are that it's really easy to sell something to somebody that knows they want it. You know, it's really, really easy. There's different levels of awareness, different familiarities with what's available and things like that. But when you have a really strong match between somebody that has a need and knows that there's solutions that you match, it's very, very easy to sell to them. So we do a lot of work to try to filter down to those people and make it easy for them to buy. And then the people that aren't there, we try to educate them and help them learn to introspect a little bit so they can decide for themselves whether something's the right, fit for them. But yeah, a lot of these things, they're really easy to say, but I think in practice, it's a lot more subtle, because it can sound like I'm saying only bother talking to people who are a great fit for exactly what you're selling. And that's not the case. I sell programs to a lot of people that are just tangential probably, but one of the reasons we're able to do that is because we do know exactly what we're strong at, and we do focus on the people that are a great fit, so that we can spend some time helping people that need to adapt it a little bit to them, right? So in email, as far as segmentation, yeah, we do a ton of stuff. We have so many automated email funnels or sequences or whatever you want to call them. It's absolutely ridiculous. And sometimes it is a clusterfuck, and one thing breaks and it breaks 98 other things. And so one of the reasons that we don't segment as hard as we could programmatically is the fact that we've found that people fall through the cracks, or they don't answer the survey, or they use a different email address or a different device or something like that. And if you're relying on your personalization software or your segmentation to be accurate 100% of the time, you're going to be fooling yourself. So we actually purposely leave a very good amount of margin around all of that stuff. But we do try to get a really good idea of, at least, is somebody doing this because they're a serious athlete, or are they just trying to get in shape? Are they doing this because they want to get general fitness, or because they specifically need to improve their mobility to get rid of aches and pains? Something like that, right? And so we have some very simple, like A, B, or ABCs that we will divide up, and we will promote a different course to them based on what is an obvious preference or an obvious need that they've done in a survey or or that we can tell through their behavior based on which articles, which content they've consumed.
So those sequences that you're sending to people based on what segment they're in, are those automations? Is that the way that you're sending it, or they tend to be broadcast?
Mostly automated, yeah. The easiest way to describe what we tend to do is we will try to get people into our main email list, and either before or after that, at some point, we ask them some questions to segment them. And these things sync up when they opt in, and we send them a general welcome sequence, right? If they opted in asking for a particular sort of resource, then we give them that thing. Otherwise, we kind of introduce ourselves and tell them, what's coming. We have, some indoctrination and free content that we send them. But generally, we have recognized that, and this is just through years of looking at numbers, most people who buy after opting in by email will do so in the first 3 to 5 days. Then we have a second drop-off point at 10 to 14 days. And our third drop-off point is at around 35 days. So we know that based on a lot of data. So what we do is we make sure that on day 3 or 4, depending on what time of day they opt in, we send them the first offer. And it's pretty slow pitch. It's not a hard sell kind of thing. And a lot of people take that. But then if they don't, then after, another week, we send them basically the same offer again, right before that second drop-off point. And then we'll, give them more content and things. And then after that, before that third drop-off point, we basically send them a variation on that same offer. And this first offer is basically, it's a value add to whichever, either the main intro program we have, or if we've determined another is a better fit for them by segmenting to that program. And that's most of it. And then from there, we have like different sequences. Somebody does this, but not that, and they get here, or stop answering emails, or, all kinds of different stuff. But the main thing is that we make sure that we don't throw a lot of barriers between them and, like I said earlier, that most efficient way we can help them. We try to answer their questions, address their concerns, and let them know that this is a thing that is proven to work by over 70,000 people, and we're pretty damn sure it'll work for you too.
Now, the downside that I see with all of the automations, and you alluded to this earlier, is it can be an absolute nightmare when something goes wrong, or it can then end up not working, or you think people are getting messages and it turns out they weren't getting them for whatever reason. So that's kind of the downside to it. And it sounds like you went further, you've kind of eased back, and you're happy with where you are now.
Well, happy is relative.
Yeah. That's kind of the question, right? It's like, how do you feel about it? Do you ever think, oh, screw it, I'm just going to go and send out broadcast to the entire list instead of all of this clever stuff?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, when we do have a new program, or if we do have a promotion or things like that, then we do live promotions too. When we have new things, or when we make a big update to something, or when we have a pricing change or something like that, if we're going to increase the pricing, we definitely do a promotion around that. So for those things, it's usually pretty easy. We can just pause the automations, and then we do, a live launch cycle on those things to whichever segment.
So you still limit that live launch to the segment that you think is going to be interested?
If there's a very clear definition around that, if it's something like a pricing change or something like that, though, then we'll basically tell everyone that doesn't have that program.
What we've been experimenting with recently to try and find the middle ground with launches. Let's say we've got a launch that's going on that's got a webinar followed by a series, just a regular email promotion for discount, cart close, kind of a straightforward launch. Then we'll send out some emails promoting the webinar, maybe 1 or 2 to the whole list, and then maybe a few more, but the few more is only to the ones who either open those original emails or are in a segment where we're like, oh, they're interested in that topic. Let's say it's about digital drawing. It's like, we know that this segment is really interested in this kind of product because they want to do this as a business. So then we send emails out to everybody because everybody might be interested, and then a few more to the people who we know are definitely going to be. And that way we're trying to find that middle ground between not really annoying people who aren't in the segment, but giving everybody a chance to buy.
Yeah, I think that's really good. It's important. One of the things that I think is really tricky with automated email marketing is, at some point, marketers got really hung up on thinking the data that's easily available to them is the most important or only important data. And what I mean by that is, why do marketers care about CTR? Why do we give a shit what the click-through rate of an email is? Why? Because Aweber made that statistic available back 15 years ago, and it's one of the very few statistics we have to go on.
Mm.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what percentage of people click on the email unless you're like A/Bing different things to see if different angles result in a massively different click-through rate. But the thing is, most email marketers don't have a list big enough that you're going to get any kind of statistical significance with an A/B test on an email send. It's just not going to happen for most of us. Most of us don't get enough clicks, right? You need at least 10,000 clicks to really be able to know that your A variation is better than your B variation. So instead of that, what actually should you be tracking? And so it's crazy because most email tools that I'm aware of don't do this natively. How many dollars do you make for every person that you send that email to? That to me is the most important thing. And I don't, some people aren't going to open it and some people aren't going to click it and some people have images turned off and the tracking is imperfect, and that's fine. Like, there's a little bit of fudge in every statistic, but I want to know on average, how many dollars per recipient is an email getting, right? And we don't track a lot of these things because they're harder to set up, or email tools will want to inflate that number. So they'll, attribute dollars to sales to people that received the email but never opened it. And this is why we have to rely on third-party tracking tools a lot of times to be able to come up with these things. But that's what I think is really important, is we see that we can track opens or clicks, but there's other things that someone can do when they get an email. They can mark it as spam. They can ignore it. They can open it in 5 or 6 days. They can reply to it. And this is one of the actions that I think that we do a horrible job in general as email marketers of responding to, because your email marketing tool can't tell if you've gotten a response to that email. So we actually had to build our own, so that when somebody replies to one of our emails, it creates an event in our ESP that says this person replied. So for example, in your live launch or promotion, you send one thing to people that opened but didn't click. Maybe you send a different one a few days later to people that clicked but didn't buy. But what about the people that maybe clicked and then they responded with a question? Do you want to send them the same email to somebody that didn't reply? So I actually built this tool that lets us respond differently to people that ask questions. Things like this, I think, are really important. We look at what's obvious, but we forget that a lot of the tactics are based on just what's convenient for us to use, rather than what's the actual behavior of a prospect getting this email or seeing this ad or reading this article or considering buying this course. What's the actual behavior of somebody who's really interested? Because I'll tell you, somebody that replies to an email with questions is really interested.
So how do you respond differently to those guys? What is it that's going out to people who have replied?
Right. So, I mean, the main thing with them is we also started doing, because we found that there's replies that are trending towards a yes and replies that are trending towards a no. And especially if somebody has replied and said, oh, thanks for the offer, but I'm just not interested right now. Or, I mean, anymore, like we get people that, let's say, oh, I'd love to, but I just lost my job. Well, I'm not going to insult that guy by sending him 5 more emails before the cutoff date. I mean, he knows it's automated. He'll be fine. He'll get over it. But if I can just say, hey, cool, you won't hear about this promotion again. Maybe in a year, he might be ready. And this happens to us all the time, as people say, when I found you, I wasn't ready to buy one of your courses, but I'm so happy I finally am in a position to do so now. So we have our support people again. When these replies come in, they'll tag them as leaning towards a yes or a no. And people leaning towards a yes, I'll just make sure that they get the reminder before the end of the promotion. And maybe I'll give them like a very long email that's just a very detailed FAQ, like super long. We're talking like a 4,000 word email, the kind of thing that nobody in their right mind would ever read. The kind of thing that if you put it on a sales page, people be like, oh, nobody reads long sales pages anymore. I'll put that damn thing in an email and expect people to read it with only one tiny CTA at the very end. And the thing is, that's because these people are very interested, and they will probably read about at least a quarter to a half of that. And they will scroll down to the end and they'll, buy it. The people that are a no, then we just filter them out of the rest of the promo.
We've got a client at the moment. He had a automated webinar funnel, and he was selling through calls. It was an expensive program, and he would get people onto a sales call and talk to them. And he wanted to stop doing it because it was a pain in the ass. So he moved to making the webinar automated and lowered the price and had emails about it, just saying, this is how to buy it. This is going away, this deal, this kind of thing. And then he added in, I think, like 12 emails dealing with objections. Like, here's every single objection you might have. Right, we're going to deal with each of them one by one and just work our way through, because there are people out there who've got this objection. They need to get that email. Well, there's other people who've got this objection. They have to get that email. It's kind of like you're saying with the frequently asked questions email. If somebody wants to know something, they're going to go and search and find it and what have you. And most people are never going to read all of that. But if it's not there, that one person can't buy. They just feel like, okay, I don't know about the.
So most of my marketing knowledge originated when I studied with Clay Collins years and years and years ago.
Okay.
I was in his course in about 2009 when he, before he founded Lead Pages, and I actually ended up doing copywriting with him and coaching a lot of clients with him. But what I really learned from him is that people's objections are very, very granular and very specific. And you can show them that a thing has efficacy and that your claims have veracity and that what you're trying to do is based on evidence and solid procedure. But they will ask you, okay, I can see that it works for some people, but will it work for a 30-year-old school teacher from Minneapolis? And why is that relevant? It doesn't seem to make any difference at all, but people they want to see that it will work for someone in their exact situation. And we get this all the time since we do fitness things. We get questions, will this work for somebody with a total knee replacement? Will this work for somebody with 2 total knee replacements? Will this work for somebody with back pain? Will this work for somebody who's overweight? Will this work for somebody who's over 40? And the answer to all of these is yes, but we can show somebody who is 60 years old, overweight with 2 knee replacements doing it, and they will still ask each of these questions, because they need to hear that it is okay. And some of this is a permission-seeking behavior. Some people do just want to be told, yes, it is okay for you to believe. Yes, it is okay for you to buy this. And that sounds really cynical to say that it's permission-seeking behavior, but we're all humans. We all have these things. We need approval. It's a real thing. But people do feel like these very granular objections will give them just enough to hesitate. And as you know, as a marketer, when somebody decides that you can't help them, that's actually a good thing. What's actually the biggest cause of lost sales, truly lost sales, is people that never make a decision.
I feel as well, and I think this is something that you do very well, what goes along with that is a certain amount of trust. And I think a lot of people talk about benefits, not the features. Well, that's great, but that only works if they believe you. And a lot of people selling stuff online are not trustworthy and should not be believed. And they'll say, and this thing might be great and it'll work brilliantly for this group over here, but it won't work for these guys over here. The fact that you tell them it'll work for them, it kind of works in a couple of ways. One is by making it more specific in that answer, it kind of means that you are saying, you are taking the responsibility that it does work for them. Like it's taking that onus of responsibility, but also the fact that you build up so much trust by just the style that you're using, I think allows you to say that and be believed.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like you mentioned, tone, that's something that's really important to me, is that we keep a very open and very honest tone with things, because I do think that things work best, if you're talking about courses, they work best if the people believe they're going to work. And this is why there's so much psychology around constructing courses and onboarding and getting people to take the first step to even do the first lesson. Sometimes the drop-off rate by a week into any course is like 80-90% a lot of times, right? So how do you get people to actually get results? Well, one of the things is you need them to trust that the thing is going to work. And so I try to build that throughout, the beginning so that it holds over and, keep building that trust as they start using the courses too. I think it's really, really important to understand the psychology of not just buying behavior, but also of starting behavior, of using and continuing behavior. And especially if your course is solving a persistent challenge that people have had. I wouldn't go so far as to call it trauma, but the experiences that they've had that have prevented their success leading up to that point are all things that are, holding them back from fully embracing your solutions and becoming your star student and best case study.
I see a lot of times people create courses, put together the marketing for it, sell the course, and then that person, the customer, doesn't then get any further contact about that course. And I see this as a big mistake in two ways. One, it's you've almost got an ethical requirement to support them through that process of using it and stopping them from getting stuck. But secondly, people who've bought stuff from you are people who are going to buy more stuff from you, but only if they use the first thing that they bought from you. So otherwise, it's like, what's the point? And I saw somebody do this really well. I'm trying to remember, Lisa Sasevich. She has courses that she really focuses on trying to get people to go through. And at the end of the course, she's then got an upsell. Like the final module in every course that you buy is like, what's next? If you're in this situation, maybe you'll get this. If you're in this situation, maybe you should get that. And so it's almost, she's got an encouragement for herself to make sure people finish, because if they don't get to the last module, they don't see the upsell to go and buy the next thing. So it kind of doesn't really work together. What do you guys do?
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, we do some of that actually, like for our intro course especially, that we recommend people do. We do, by the time they get to the end of it, by the time they're making it like about 2/3 of the way through, a lot of people are already emailing us, asking us what to do next. I think if they make it 2/3 of the way through, the chances of them wanting to continue are really, really strong, right? Because that's just better than average, and they're enjoying it and getting some results, right? So what we do is something very similar. Is we have a couple of natural progressions from there, and we try to let them know how to pick what to do next, and we also give them the option to upgrade to a bundle price, even if they only bought the single thing first, so that it gives them a little bit of incentive to go on and do that rather than putting it off or considering it for later. We give them an option to get a sort of grandfathered discount on the bundle price if they want to get the further on courses.
So what places would you suggest people go to if they want to learn more about this? You mentioned about Clay Collins, and you mentioned you'd kind of studied stuff with him. Are there any email marketing courses or forums or masterminds or summits or anything like that that you'll think are the place to go to learn more about this?
Right. So the thing is I learned most of what I formally learned about marketing. Like I think 2009 was when I studied with Clay and also with Laura Roeder, who now runs Edgar and Paperbell. And they're both just super smart people. Yeah, Clay mostly does, after he sold Lead Pages, now he's mostly involved in the crypto space. But still, if you follow Clay and Laura on any social channel or just get to know them, they're excellent people and you can learn a lot from them. Just smart. As far as things that I've learned since then, mostly it's been a matter of trial and error. I've tried a bunch of stuff. I've kept my eyes open and been very experimental with things. I wouldn't say that I've gone to a lot of conferences or taken a lot of courses that have been super helpful, but I do have 3 things that I can recommend that I have found helpful, and helpful in ways that are uncommon. And so one is Brennan Dunn's ConvertKit course, and he also has the course, I think he still sells Mastering Drip, but even if you don't use ConvertKit, if you use any kind of email automation software, whether you use Brennan's software, WriteMessage or not, Brennan is one of the cleverest thinkers in email marketing and has built tools. He is a really good hybrid of marketer and coder. And so He's got a great perspective on how to set up these tools in very clever ways without it being overwhelming. And so a lot of the things that I've talked about with like segmentation and that were really interesting, because when I discovered Brennan, he was posting on Twitter about trying to build this thing, and I was trying to build it internally at the same time. And we eventually abandoned it and just bought his software. So Brennan's course will teach you a ton about email marketing, and I highly recommend that. And by the way, I get nothing from any of these people. Like, they don't even know I'm recommending them. But next one, podcast. Jay Acunzo has a really cool course on your podcast premise. And I think this is something that like a lot of podcasts really suffer from, is not having a very clear thrust about what they're really about and how they're different from other podcasts, right? And so I actually just bought this a few weeks ago, and it has been really interesting because Jay's course isn't based on what most podcast courses are, which is how to get as many downloads as possible, how to interview all these experts and steal their audiences and sell another course on podcasting and sell ads. For him, the podcast is a way to deepen your relationship with your customers. And the podcast is not the product itself. It's just something that supports your product. And I think that that's really, really interesting. The other one that I would say is, if you're into content marketing, Jimmy Daly's Superpath Pro membership has a ton of training in there that I actually bought it just to check out. And there's so much stuff that I would never have time to try to get through as somebody who runs a company. But if I were bringing on a content marketer that needed training, I would absolutely have them use that. So those are the three things that if I were hiring someone and saying, this is what you need to learn to get up to speed and be one of the best at either email marketing, content marketing, or podcasts, then those are the three things. And I surprised myself by having an answer to this, because I generally don't consume a lot of marketing training content. I got to the point a few years ago where all of the blogs ended up being regurgitated, recycled stuff that I had seen 1,000 times before. And I've done all of these tactics. I've used all of these strategies. So, after 11 or 12 years of selling courses, there's not a lot that you're going to learn from somebody who's 20-year-old writing an article on marketing courses.
Yeah, I mostly stopped reading blog posts, and to be honest, actually mostly stopped listening to podcasts about this kind of topic, because I found so much of it was so surface level, and focusing a lot more on masterminds and groups, and then paid training courses as well. And I guess what I'm going to go with what you're saying about making the podcast different. What I'm trying to do here is look at who is there who's actually talking to the people who are creating online courses about their funnels and their email marketing. And I wasn't finding it. So I was like, right, I'm going to go and start interviewing people about these specific things. I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and talking to everybody about this and sharing your wisdom. You mentioned to me that you got an article that was particularly useful for people who are creating online courses and spending too much time in their chair. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, all of us who do this online life, we sit in front of screens all day long. And I remember in 2009, when I was making my very first course, even before the course, I made an ebook, and this was the first thing I sold online. And I spent, 16 hours a day at this little desk in my kitchen, a little folding chair, man. I mean, we've been there, you know what it's like, John, and dude, you spend all this time. And even when you have a course and you're selling it and you're somewhat successful, there's so many things to optimize, so many things to do. You check your stats, you do this, you spend all this time, sitting in a chair at your desk, cramped. And over time, it is horrible for your body, and especially like your wrists, you get your RSI symptoms and stuff, your shoulders get hunched, your hips are constantly bent, you end up with back pain. So anyway, at GMB, we have this approach to mobility and movement. One of my partners is a physical therapist. We live this same life. We know what it's like sitting in chairs. John will have the link, but this article, basically, it's got some stretches and a quick routine that you can do actually while at a desk, sitting in a chair, to help stretch out your hips, your neck, your shoulders, your wrists. And it's completely free. Like, I don't ask anything from this, but just try it and see if you feel better. Learn to take care of yourself so that whatever it is you're teaching, you can do it generously and for the long haul. And if you could try this routine to keep yourself healthy while you do so, I would consider that a personal favor.
Nice. So we'll put the link underneath in the show notes so everybody can click through and go and visit that. Thanks, Andy.